All right. I don't know how it's possible that I am just now seeing this little media interview question type thing that happened after Sarah Boone's verdict was in, but I have not seen it. So maybe some of you haven't, and we can just watch it together. I did click into it to see if I had not for sure seen it, and no, I haven't. Evidently, right after the verdict that night, James Owens went outside and answered some questions from Court TV. So I thought we would watch together. I am doing another video later tonight on Sarah Boone. We're going to talk about her motions, that she's trying to get a new trial, and just what we think on it. So that's coming later. But right now, I am so interested in seeing if what he said that night changed at all from when he actually went on Court TV and talked further with them. All right, hopefully there's not a lot of commercials.
You have second-degree murder in the suitcase murder trial. Big verdict on this Friday night here on Court TV. We're going to take you straight down to the courthouse in Orlando. Kelly Craft is there with Sarah Boone's attorney. Kelly.
Hey there, Vinny. Yeah, it didn't take very long for the jurors to return a verdict in this case. Sarah Boone guilty of second-degree murder. We are joined now by her defense counsel, who advocated for her vehemently throughout this trial. This is James Owens. James, what's your reaction to the verdict?
Just disappointed. Sarah's devastated. She's disappointed. We felt like we had a good defense with the facts that we had. Obviously, we had some hurdles to overcome for the state's evidence, and for whatever reason, the jury didn't see it our way. We respect the jury's decision. I'm sure that Sarah Boone is going to want to appeal. I believe that she does have potentially 2 or 3 good appellate issues. So the next thing in store is, I think we've got sentencing set for, I believe, Monday, December the 2nd at 1:30. And we intend to call Dr. Harper as a witness to speak about her other mental health issues.
So already, by what Owens is saying, so we know now why he said it's going to take them 45 minutes on sentencing day. It's because they're going to have somebody come and take the stand again and hope that the judge will give some leniency, just help her out in some way instead of giving her the max for everything. We'll see what this judge decides to do. I mean, Sarah's been a lot through this whole process, and I have to imagine the judge is so sick of her case. So it'll be interesting. I really hope that he ends up going over everything and holding her accountable for what she did to George, and also how she treated all of her other lawyers, because all of them had a very bad experience with her.
She struggles with, and hopefully the court will consider that.
Mr. Owens, Sarah Boone was offered a plea deal in this case, manslaughter. She did not take it. What do you think now, having the verdict?
Well, ultimately, that's their decision. You know, they've got a couple of fundamental decisions. One is whether to plead guilty to anything, and the other is whether to go to trial, and the other is, you know, whether to testify, and then the other is whether to appeal. And so Sarah Boone maintained that she wanted a trial the entire time, and we did discuss, there were plea negotiations, and there were offers on the table for the lesser charge of manslaughter, but Sarah ultimately rejected those offers and wanted her day in court.
She felt, it seemed, throughout this entire trial, she seemed to be very upbeat. It seemed, though, I was getting the sense she really felt she hadn't done anything criminally wrong.
Well, I think, you know, I believe she's a battered spouse, and I believe she believes she's a battered spouse. Once she learned, and we gave her a bunch of material about the subject, once she learned, you know, what she had gone through with George Torres, I think she believed she was a battered spouse. So we believed in that scenario that she was justified in defending herself. And so she felt good because she had a defense, and she had lawyers. You know, initially she was going to represent herself, and then she did that for a while, and I think she appreciated the fact that we came in, myself, Tony Henderson, and Kevin Beck, and then our team. We had, you know, 5 or 6 people working on the case for the last 45 days trying to get ready for trial, and I think she appreciated our efforts. She knew we were working hard. I've been here in Orlando for 3 weeks, and then The rest of the team's been here for 2 weeks, so we've been doing everything we could do to represent her to the best of our ability, and that's what we did with the time that we had.
You really put up a good fight. Were you surprised that the jurors came back as quickly as they did?
I was. I think that, you know, the rebuttal evidence where they played a bunch of videotapes of off Sarah's phone, where there were some interactions with Sarah and George, I think that affected the jury.
Yeah.
What do you think another big challenge was for you in this case?
Well, of course, the suitcase video is difficult to deal with. And then, you know, her interrogation, the 2-hour interrogation at the sheriff's department. So, I mean, you know, we have evidence. That's probably the best evidence in a case, is videotape oftentimes is the best evidence. And, you know, we had some big hurdles to overcome. And obviously the jury, and I respect the jury's decision, saw it a different way than we presented.
During your closing arguments, one of the things that you talked about was we're in 2024, and the perception that the state may be trying to give that she in a way deserved this, that she was the aggressor. You talked about how men are taught not to put a hand on a woman. I thought that that was pretty powerful. I thought that was going to resonate a little bit more with the jury.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it was a long trial and the testimony came out. You know, the state got in a bunch of evidence about, like I said, the video interactions between George and Sarah. And some of that, it seemed like Sarah was berating him a little bit and talking down to him a little bit. And, you know, the state had argued that this was a mutual...
That she talked down at him a little bit. Almost every video that she was recording was her talking down, even when he was in the suitcase. But we got to hear that she had that same attitude, what seemingly was through the whole relationship. And I'm also going to touch on the fact that he said Sarah and he felt justified that she should have left him in there, and that way, you know, she didn't get hurt or whatever. Even so, that wasn't her line of thinking at the time. But justified, no. And it's funny because so many people are following this story, you know, really keeping up with everything. And I have yet to still find one person who's on Sarah Boone's side. And that's rare. Sometimes people like to come up with like little issues and try to give benefit of doubt in some things. But no, every single time everybody says that it is her fault. She intentionally did it. She had been abusing him for years. I mean, and we know that her ex-husband, Brian Boone, said that when she drank, she would get physically violent. So I just think it's funny using the word justified. There is no reason that that should have ever happened.
Abusive situation that Sarah verbally, emotionally maybe abused him. So I think there was some of that going on in the relationship. It was a dysfunctional, toxic relationship. Obviously, those two didn't need to be together, but they, for whatever reason, they could not stay away from each other. And even when she had been battered multiple times by him over time,
that picture didn't
for whatever
even really
reason,
look
they
like
couldn't
her.
break up. And it just, I think everybody around, law enforcement, the neighbors, family, all knew how bad the situation was, but for whatever reason, they were drawn to each other and couldn't let go.
The judge made it clear before the verdict was read that he did not want any outbursts in the courtroom. We had one earlier from George Torres's family. No real reaction from Sarah Boone. I just saw her talking with you, but obviously, as you were mentioning, seems to be not very happy, devastated with the verdict.
Yeah, she couldn't believe it. We were optimistic. You know, we were optimistic, and I understand, you know, these things happen, and there's a murder charge, so, you know, somebody died, so it's difficult for a jury sometimes not to come back with something, and they came back with the highest charge. I was hoping maybe for something lesser, but we understand. Sarah's in shock. You know, it happened, and then she was escorted out of the court fairly quickly, so we really didn't get a chance to talk that much. She said she would call me tomorrow. I'm going to be driving back home, and we'll talk. I'll be on the road for 6 hours, so we'll talk for however long. But, you know, I explained to her she had some She had a right to an appeal, and she had 2 or 3 good appellate issues. So I told her to keep her head up.
Mr. Owens, you were not her first attorney. She went through several attorneys. How was she to work with?
She was fine. I think once she realized, it wasn't just me, and I spent a lot of time down here with her. And then once she realized Tony Henderson really helped me out a lot with Sarah Boone. And, I've represented some difficult clients. I've been doing it quite a while. But Sarah, was, of course, she didn't want to give up the power because she'd had the case for 4.5 years. She had so many different lawyers. But I think once she started to trust us and realized that we really cared about her, we really believed in her, and we wanted to do everything we could to fight for her, I think she finally, it didn't take too long for her to develop a sense that we were really genuinely trying to help her. And I think once she saw how hard we were working and everything we were trying to do to help her, we didn't have a problem.
And you got involved with this case because you saw that she had taken out an ad.
Yeah, as you know, the court had ruled that she forfeited her right to a lawyer, a public lawyer. And so she was going to have to represent herself. And I think she went to a couple of hearings and realized that that's a lot harder than it looks. And that's when she had reached out for somebody in the private bar to take the case. And I came down and visited with her, and I agreed to do it. So we were in it to win it. We tried everything we could do to present the case in a fashion that the jury would consider her side.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take quinol turmeric because it
while
helps with
this
healthy
ad
joints
is
and inflammation
going
support.
on,
Why quinol?
I think it's commendable that he is picking up her case in the sense that no one else would. He said pretty early on that he thought a lawyer in Orlando would take it, and nobody did. So then he said he felt it was the right thing if he did it. I also think he's looking for clout and hoping to maybe get more clientele and push himself further for being willing to take this case. And that probably will happen. And man, he has to put up with Sarah, so I can't even imagine how frustrating this whole thing has been for him.
Was when you got the expert of the states to talk about the fact that she did believe that Sarah Boone suffered from battered spouse syndrome. I thought that was going to be a big game changer for you.
Well, it was. I've got some disagreements about how that was all handled because she came out with an opinion that she had never expressed before.
And then you had to conduct a deposition right there in court.
Yeah, I've never had to do that. That was a first, but it was a unique situation. Of course, the judge had set a date certain about trying the case, so I had the case for about 45 days, but we tried to schedule Dr. Werner's deposition. I believe we took it on October the 4th, and then later on she came up with another opinion that I wasn't aware of until in the courtroom, and so the judge allowed me to take a deposition. I never heard of it happening before. First time it ever happened, but it did. And, we did the best that we could to counter that and then to cross-examine her. But, yeah, I think initially she had said she hadn't made up her mind about it. But I think after a little bit of time, she decided to go ahead and give the opinion that Sarah did suffer from battered spouse. And that corroborated what Dr. Harper had said, that she did suffer from battered spouse syndrome. So I guess that was a good of that.
Any thought in hindsight that maybe there was a motion to eliminate for you not to use the battered spouse syndrome defense, to not talk about self-defense? Obviously, you got to be able to do that. The state was very clear. She needs to say there's an overt act. She eventually did. She said his hand coming out of the suitcase was that overt act. In hindsight, could there have been another strategy that you could have taken that could have been more successful? Maybe not argue battered spouse syndrome?
No, I don't think so. I think
him sticking his hand through the small opening of the suitcase. And what did we learn that Sarah Boone did when he did that? She picked up the baseball bat and started hitting his hand. She said she just was shoving it gently back into the suitcase. But based on what the forensic science, are they forensic pathologists? Based on what they said, is there's bruises all over in certain locations on his back, his hands. Not good. So who knows what she actually did at that moment in time and what she actually remembers.
You know, what she was saying in that 2-minute video to George while he was in the suitcase, I'm convinced was tied to the trauma that she had received from the abuse that she had suffered from George. And I just think Dr. Harper, you know, it's a complex syndrome. It really is. And it's difficult for lay people to understand. I've tried to talk to, you know, the psychologist, the psychiatrist about it to try to understand it. You know, why somebody wouldn't leave that situation. Why, you know, if they're getting beaten up, they're getting stabbed in the leg, why wouldn't you leave that situation? It's one of those things, it's a head scratcher for a lot of people. And so that's the reason you bring in expert testimony, is to try to explain that to a jury what was going on. But it's difficult for people to really understand.
When Sarah Boone refused the plea offer, the judge made it very clear to her that the minimum he could sentence her to would be 22 years in prison. Is she prepared for the sentencing? It's going to be in December.
I don't think she's prepared. I don't believe that. You know, I think she was in hopes. You know, she was excited about us, and she felt like she had a defense and that we were doing everything, and she had the experts lined up. So I don't think she was thinking about this at all. I think she was very optimistic. That's why she was optimistic during the trial.
Yes,
she was happy with us every day. She was happy with what we were doing. And, of course, you know, she understood that it was a valid defense in Florida, battered spouse using it to justify the force that you use. So, yeah, she's devastated, and she hadn't come to grips. Like I say, I'll talk to her tomorrow, but she was just stunned today.
Vinny also has a question. Vinny, what's the question?
Yeah, I had a couple questions for James. First, at the sentencing, will this judge have much discretion in what the sentence can be? And do you expect Sarah to express any sense of remorse at sentencing?
At the sentencing, will the judge, Vinny's asking, at the sentencing, will the judge have any discretion? This is her first felony. The judge made that very clear. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, will Sarah Boone say something? Will she express any sort of remorse for what took place? Will she make a statement in allocution at her sentencing? I know you have to take some preparation time for that.
I think the prosecutor had said the low end of the guidelines was 22 years, and I think the judge told Sarah that, so I think that probably is the minimum, unless there's something I'm missing, maybe a downward departure. I don't know that she would qualify, but you know, the judge has a range, and the judge has the discretion, and the judge, you know, is going to hear from the victim's family, and then the judge is going to hear from Dr. Harper, and ultimately the judge is going to have to hear from Sarah Boone about this. I don't know what her position is going to be. But we'll see.
Mr. Owens, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice work.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, that wraps that up. Yeah, it's shocking to me that she was so shocked. It's really not that hard. I don't understand why she thought that it was going to go her way. But she truly thought that she would not be found guilty. I mean, you could tell based on the fact that she rejected the plea deal, but I don't think she thought she was going to get in trouble at all. And I just don't understand that part. You know, as she has said, she excels at everything, and she was a straight A student. I feel like this is common knowledge. Like, of course you're going to get in trouble. What degree? You know, we don't know, but she just thought she was going to walk free. Maybe that she did her time because she's been in there for about 4 years. No, probably not. And I don't think that the judge will do the minimum. I also don't know if I see him doing the maximum, but I really doubt it's going to be the 22 years, especially after listening to the families do their well, their victim impact statements, but going through the relationships and putting everything out there and how heartbreaking this was to them. And, keep in mind, he has kids. Some of them are a bit younger too. I mean, it's just not a good situation all around. And I hope that a lot of his family will step forward at sentencing and talk about him. As much as we've tried to get an idea of who George is, and I did that whole unmasking video of him, there's so many things that we don't know. And it would just be nice to know. It would be a good thing to remember him in other aspects instead of the guy who got locked in a suitcase and died because of Sarah Boone. So hopefully they will. We have to wait a month for that, which is sad, but at least it's all coming, and it's going to be coming to a close for his family. So I'm going to wrap this up now. Like I said, I have one more Sarah Boone video that I'm going to do later. It's going through her motions for a new trial. There were 3 different things that Owens said is the reason why there should be a mistrial and for her to get another one. But we'll get more on that later. All right, thanks for watching. See you later if you're staying on.